Welcome to Get Real with Brian Stuckey, an all-new program to get you real information about how real estate affects you, your family, and your community. Brought to you in part by Bankers Network Corporation. And now, Brian Stuckey.
Good evening. Welcome to Get Real. I'm Brian Stuckey, and I've got a bittersweet program for you. I always enjoy interviewing the different people I have on here, but I have Madison Nguyen coming on. She's a council member for District 7. It's bitter because I'm talking to her about the recall coming up on March 3rd. I support her fully. Sweet because I get to have her come on the program and explain her position on the recall. And so we'll be talking to her about that. As well, I got Steve Suchow on the property pages. It's kind of a jungle out there in the real estate market. We're going to talk about that. Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? And Steve's going to give us some insight on that. And then in the By the Numbers segment, I'll be looking in the camera and letting you know what you can do if you're interested in refinancing. Certainly interest rates have been going down. Can you take advantage of it? We'll be finding out. But first, in the Spotlight segment, Madison Nguyen. Madison Nguyen is my guest. She's in the Spotlight segment. She's been on a few times, and I've loved having her come on the program. She was the first elected Vietnamese woman in the state of California, and that was an exciting moment. But as a result of naming a street, basically a section of her district, there's all sorts of problems with whether it should be called Saigon Business District or Little Saigon. And if you haven't been reading the Mercury News or you haven't noticed this, then I don't know where you're at. But Madison, I just need to ask you, you would have been, I've got this pamphlet on you, by the way, and you've got all these things that you've accomplished in your district. There's 38 things that you've done since you've been in there, which is what you were elected to do. And because of a name of a section within your district of a big city of San Jose, you're having to deal with this recall. I just need to ask you, first of all, it's like, where is this area so people of San Jose, people certainly of District 7 know where it's at, but what section are we talking about?
Sure. Well, let me just begin by saying thank you again for the opportunity to be here. It's always great to be on your show. This particular project is actually on Story Road. It's a business district designation designating a portion of Story Road as a Vietnamese retail area. Mm-hmm. And the City Council unanimously approved that. It wasn't until we went out to solicit input from the community in regards to giving this particular designation a name, that's when the controversy happened. And so this is a portion of Story Road in District 7 in the city of San Jose. Yeah,
Little Saigon's a cute name. It's the second best name that I can think of. I think you hit it right. You hit a home run the first time. Saigon Business District, I think it just allows for it's a more robust name. And I would just think that it caters for more business opportunities as well. I guess you agree, since that's what you came up with.
Absolutely, and I think for a lot of folks, they agree with the name. The name Saigon Business District was a compromise between Little Saigon and New Saigon. Okay. Those were the two chosen names that the community came up with. And as an elected official, as someone who represents District 7, I didn't want to isolate any particular group. So I recommended Saigon Business District because this is a business district designation. And so the two words business district is relevant in terms of giving an appropriate name. Okay. But unfortunately, folks who advocated for the name Little Saigon were not satisfied with the recommendation, with the compromise, and therefore they started this recall effort.
Okay. Now, how's the recall going?
Recall is going great. I've been out there every day talking to as many voters as possible, reconnecting with the residents in my district, which is always a good thing, letting them know the things that I've done in the last 3 years as their representative. Mm-hmm. And from the voter data that we've been gathering, it's looking really positive.
Okay. And who is supporting you on this as well? I mean, within your constituency, but also as far as the citywide and even statewide?
The campaign has been receiving a lot of excellent support. Obviously, Mayor Chuck Rhee has been a really strong supporter, as well as all the members of the San Jose City Council. We have former elected officials like Norma Netta, who used to serve as the mayor of San Jose. We also have a lot of elected officials from Sacramento, like Assembly Member Ted Lieu, Paul Fung, Jim Bell, and many others. And so, the support has been tremendous.
And you also notice the San Jose Firefighters Association, San Jose Police Officers Association, everybody but a small contingent of people who just don't like the name prefer the name Little Saigon to Saigon Business District. What other last-ditch efforts are you making as we wind down for this recall campaign?
Sure. Well, this week in particular, from now until March 3rd, that's the day of the election. It's really crucial that voters in District 7 vote. Folks who tends to vote absentee, they have received the absentee ballot in their hands already. So we highly encourage them to vote and vote early because it's all about turnout for this election. This whole recall effort is it's becoming such a burden for a lot of people because obviously it's costing the city of San Jose more than $500,000 to start this election. And if this election was to be successful, then potentially it could cost the city up to another $1 million. In a time where, it's just really hard on everyone because the economy is such a, in a spiral downturn right now. At the same time, $500,000, we can put 5 police officers on the streets. $500,000, we can, look at different plans on how to build more neighborhood parks. And there's so many more meaningful things that we can do with that kind of money rather than, putting it toward a recall effort.
Okay. Now, after you win the recall, I'm assuming that you are. I'm going to support you 100% all the way down the road. But what are you going to do? What steps do you take then in order to put the pieces back together in District 7? And are you going to even try to win over the support of those who are your detractors?
Absolutely. I think it's really crucial that I sit down and talk with the people who started the recall effort. I'm here to represent people and to represent them in the best way that I can. And if there are some things that they're unsatisfied with my performance or maybe some kind of disagreement, here's a time for us to sit down and talk. Obviously, my term is not up until 2010, so I'll be here for another 1.5 years. And I like to use that time to reconnect with the people who have in the past opposed to maybe my ideas or my policy, but I'm willing to open my arms and reach out and reconnect with them and sit down again to see if we can work together. That'd
be great, so, and then, I hate to bring this up, but if you were defeated, what would your future look like then? What would Madison Nguyen be looking to do?
That's a good question. The thing is that I want to focus on this recall effort right now. We've been doing really well. We've been reconnecting with the voters, and from the voter data that we've been collecting, it's looking very promising. So I just wanted to focus on that and focus on that for now until March 3rd.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So it's like, I know you got a lot of projects. Again, I was looking at this pamphlet of all the accomplishments that have been achieved so far. Who knows what else could have been achieved if you could have focused all your attention on that. And what would you be looking at in the last year of what other projects or some of the things that you're looking to do in the final year?
Sure. There's a couple of citywide initiatives that I want to take some leadership role in. For example, right now we're looking at trying to tap the federal government with a stimulus plan, and with the city of San Jose, we have a very strong green vision. If we can somehow get the federal government to allocate some of that funding down here to the city of San Jose so that we can create more green jobs for our residents here, that's definitely a big goal that that I'm working on along with my colleagues and Mayor Reed. Some of the smaller projects in the district, obviously, job creation is the #1 thing right now, and so as long as we're trying to create more jobs, build more commercial plaza so that we can give these kind of smaller jobs to our residents who are very much in need of that. I think that's very critical. Building more affordable homes for families who actually can't afford such a high price to live here in San Jose is also a very critical thing to do. So on and so forth. So there are so many projects, and that's one of the reasons why I'm working really hard to make sure that the projects that are in the pipeline, I want to be able to finish. I want to be able to deliver that because these are the things that I like to deliver until my term is up.
Okay. And after your term is up, is that something, are you interested in maybe throwing your hat back in and going after re-election?
Absolutely. I think that this is something that I enjoy doing, and I'm hoping to continue doing that for the residents.
This is what you do. So I want to give you a moment, because this is going to be aired, as I mentioned to you before. I'm going to be airing this for 4 times, and this is an opportunity for you to look in the camera if you'd like to, and go ahead and speak to your constituents and all of San Jose. So feel free to go ahead and look in the camera, Madison.
Thank you. Thank you again for watching the show. I just want to take this opportunity to thank a lot of people for the support that have given me in the past. Definitely, this is one of the most difficult times in my life, being an elected official. But also, this is a very crucial time for voters in District 7 to make a very, very important decision. Do we want to set a bad precedence here in the city of San Jose? I believe that elected officials should have the independence to make decisions based on the input that they get from all segments of the community and not just one or two particular segment of the community. So you have the ballot in your hand. If you're an absentee voter, I urge you to vote and vote early and to vote no on the recall. Thank you very much.
With that said, too, I also want to lend my support to Madison Nguyen. She's been on this program. I've interviewed a lot of politicians of San Jose and people are involved in public service, and she's an outstanding council member. I think she should be given the effort to go ahead, or the reins to go ahead and finish out her term. I think it's ridiculous, personally, that this has all come to this point because of a name of a section of a district of a city. So please, the main thing is go out and vote. And we hope that you vote against the recall of Madison Nguyen. We'll be right back in our property page segment with Steve Suchow. In the property page segment, I have Steve Suchow. He's a real estate broker with Intero, actually, and Steve's been on the program on several occasions. I've enjoyed having him, interviewing him. He's got a wealth of information. He's been doing this for quite some time. And Steve, first of all, thanks for coming back on the program.
As always, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, and I am going to write you out a check after the show. You were asking me about that earlier. But hey, one thing is, I don't know if you're a Guns N' Roses fan, but there's a song called, Welcome to the Jungle. And would you say that's a fair way to equate what's going on in the real estate market? Welcome to the jungle out there, or no?
Well, it's probably a fair way to describe San Jose politics.
Yeah, well, yes.
But actually, if you want to use that for the real estate business, I disagree with you.
Okay.
I think, if anything, it's becoming more unjungled. A year or two ago, when loans were being made unscrupulously, foolishly, appraisers were appraising properties without any rhyme or reason. Agents were using whiteout to do contracts or loan applications. That, to me, was a jungle. Mm-hmm. If anything, the market now is reminding me of a very strict parochial school. Things have gotten, very, as you say, by the numbers. They've gotten very by the numbers.
Yeah, well, that's a good analogy, because you are. It's very strict. The door is narrow for people to go ahead and get approved on a loan. But what I meant by the jungle, though, is just that there's the fluctuations in the market. Is it a good market? People are just walking around. They really don't know what's going on, and they're lost in the jungle. And yes, you've weeded out a lot of different people, a lot of lenders, and it's simplified things. But at the same time, I feel like it's a raindrop that has splattered all over the place, and we haven't come together yet. We still don't know where we're going.
I respect that analogy as well, Brian. It's true. I had somebody yesterday called me and said, "Steve, what is my house worth?" And normally I can point my finger at them and said, "Here's the number." And I actually had to take a moment back and say, "Wait a second, we need to analyze a number of different things."
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, there is some positive things going on still for people. I'm going to be talking in the next segment with you in the By the Numbers segment about some positive things in refinancing. But it's not all-inclusive. As our market, I think, right now is not all-inclusive to anybody that can go out and buy. Is it a good time, do you think, for first-time home buyers and investors? I'm thinking that those are the ones right now where they can have a great opportunity to go ahead and buy it. Is that right?
It's an excellent time right now for investors. Prices are really low. There's some foreclosed properties that are on the market that are really being priced very, very, very aggressively. And if investors have some cash behind them to fix up the property, because a lot of times on these foreclosed properties, they're not only cosmetically in trouble, sometimes they could be, to a degree, mechanically in trouble. Where the advantage is for first-time home buyers is prices are low, but without a large down payment, without some cash behind them, sometimes it's difficult for first-time home buyers to take advantage of these foreclosures because they don't have the extra cash to fix the properties up after they become the
Well,
property
the other
owner.
thing with the foreclosures, though, if it's bank-owned, the bank's not going to wait around for a potential buyer to get a loan either. Aren't these pretty much cash deals?
No, actually, no, almost all, and I've been doing work for the banks. They're all financed deals.
Okay.
I've had one cash deal out of 9 or 10 in the last 5 or 6 months, but almost all the others are
I guess
financed.
what I'm talking about is in the courthouse when they come out, when you say foreclosed property, that's what I'm thinking of.
Right.
And with that, why don't you go and explain, because what a difference between an REO is
Okay.
or short sale, because I get questions about that all the time. Why don't you go ahead and explain that?
Okay, well, I never see the properties on the courthouse steps. When they go to the courthouse steps and somebody buys them, that's the end of the deal. It never gets to a real estate agent. A buyer was there, made a bid, the bank or whoever accepted it, end of story. What I get is if when they don't sell on the courthouse steps, and quite a few properties are not selling on the courthouse steps because generally the price set is what's owed on the property. And who's going to pay that right now? So what I'm getting as far as REO is the property goes back to the bank or the lender. The lender generally doesn't market it. They have a third party that they'll give the properties to market. And the agent they contact, and there's a number of agents that are doing this, will do a broker's price opinion, giving an idea what the estimate is. Takes a few weeks to go back and forth. Then the bank will send that agent a listing contract and a price to market the property at. Generally, they make changes every 30 days. Here's the price. If it doesn't sell in 30 days, here's the new price, which is less. If it doesn't sell in 30 days, here's the new price, which is less. And most of these properties, almost all of them, get sold.
Okay. And then what would the difference between that and a short sale?
Okay. The short sale is the borrower who bought the house last year or 2 years still owns it. He hasn't lost the house. He's upside down. He owes more than the property's worth, or he can't make the mortgage payments. So he makes a plea to the bank. Please, Mr. Bank, let me sell the house. And I know I owe you $500,000 in the mortgage, but would you take $400 or $375 or whatever is arranged? In an REO, the bank already owns the property. They know they have the problem. They know the extent of the problem. They want to get rid of it. In a short sale, the bank doesn't have the property back yet. They just know they have a problem with a borrower. And banks, on foreclosures, an offer on a foreclosure, I'll get an answer from the bank in 3 days. On a short sale, it sometimes can take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 weeks to get an answer.
So that follows up my next question is that, what are some of the difficulties that you run into in both of these situations? By the way, do you get involved in short sales, or is it primarily REOs?
Primarily REOs.
Okay.
But believe me, I'm very familiar with the short sales.
Short sales too, so.
And the short sales are getting a little bit easier now because the banks are realizing if they don't work out with the borrower at this point in time, they got a bigger headache 3 months, 4 months down the road.
Well,
So
plus the longevity of, because a lot of people in a short sale situation aren't making payments anymore in both scenarios.
Understood.
So the lender's just taking it on the chin on this, but I get, it just comes to a point with them is that, where do we cut our losses?
Well,
And
the person that you speak to on a short sale at the bank is called a loss mitigation officer. And I think if you look in the dictionary, the idea is to mitigate, to decrease, to shorten and make the losses as little as possible, which does not necessarily have anything to do with what the market value of the property is.
yeah, and that's also a servicing group, not so much the lender working on that as well, trying
Correct.
to recover. So what is the timeline typically on a short sale? I think you just mentioned you can get an answer in a few days on a REO.
On an REO, once the listing goes on the market and an agent writes an offer and delivers it to the listing agent generally will get on the website, upload the data, and maybe I've gotten an answer 2 hours later,
okay.
a day later. More than a day is really, because again, the asset managers for the foreclosure companies, they really want to get these things moved. I mean, it's really chop, 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 let's get this thing going. But with a short sale, it really can take literally 1 or 2 months. And the buyer of the short sale is really out of the market trying to figure out, have I bought a house? Have I not bought a house? But with the foreclosure, you know right away.
Okay. Now, last thing is that in your opinion, do you see things slowing down in the real estate market, or do you think they are going to maintain where they're at, or do you think things are going to speed up?
I need to go out to the car and get the crystal ball.
Yeah.
Brian. You know, every day in the newspaper, whether it's in the front section or the local section, there's information. Yesterday, I saw some information that 70% of all sales are normal, 20% are foreclosures, 10% are short sales. And I was trying to find out whether that was local, state, or national. But today, there was an article, that, I think in the local section of the Mercury News, that sales in excess of $1 million are down 40% or 37%. So there's all this data that's coming out, and it's really hard to process it. It is a difficult situation for the middle guy. For the $300,000, $400,000 priced house, they're selling. And even though the Mercury News said the high range is hurting, for the 1.5 to 2 million, they're selling. But it's the fellow or the gal or the family that own the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 house. That part of the market is really quieted down the last 5 or 6 months.
If you were to be able to answer that question with accuracy, you'd be on the beach in Hawaii somewhere talking to me through
living on my
satellite
island,
dish or
right.
something like that. So Steve Suchow has been my guest. He's with Intero Real Estate. If you have any questions of my guest, Steve or Madison Nguyen or myself, please get a hold of me at 408-269-8366 or Brian at 4bestloan.com. I'm going to have Steve stick around, and we're going to go in the By the Numbers segment. We'll be right back. In the By the Numbers segment, I'm going to ask Steve to stick around because he can offer some insight, he being in the real estate industry for quite some time. Steve, I basically am going to talk about conforming loans. I'm going to look in the camera, but you add anything you want. I'm going to talk to the public out here in that now could be the greatest time we've ever had with refinancing in our lifetime. I've been doing this now for 20 years, and I've seen refinances. People were jumping up and down when we got into single-digit numbers, and now we're looking at flirting. We've been in the 4s, so.
I'm smiling because earlier today, before I came to the studio, I was in my office, and I called a past client just to say, hi, how are you? I haven't forgotten you. And it wasn't a past client from so long ago. It was from March. She financed the house at 6.4%. She told me she just refinanced at 4.9. She's only owned the house 10 months, and she's saving $500 a month.
Yep.
On the telephone, it sounded like she was doing backflips.
Yep. No, it's an exciting time. It could be getting better. It depends what's going to come up with the stimulus package, what the Federal Reserve and Treasury is going to do. But here's the catch, folks, and is that Steve just mentioned somebody, great story and everything else, but she's got to qualify. And by the way, too, you mentioned the loan amount being lower loan amount up to 417. That's a true conforming loan. That we can go to the computer and get an online approval for you with a number of lenders, and that's you've still got to have good credit. You got to have some equity in your property, and you also need to have a job to go ahead and pay for it too. Your debt to income ratios, which is what we call it, they need to be there. Now, so the 417 loans are out there, but then they have what they call a high balance conforming loan that goes up to 625, and so those also are attractive. So those are going to be right now they're in the low 5s, and those might touch in the 4s as well. And there's projection that maybe things are going to get even better as we go along. Now, jumbo loans, and that's anything over $625,000. Unfortunately, that's a sad situation right now. And that's going to be really based on what the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, what actions that they take in order to loosen up money in that area, because there's no money there right now. You can't get a 30-year fixed jumbo loan right now. The only things that they're offering are 5/1 ARMs. And that means it's fixed for 5 years and it rolls into a 1 year. Go ahead, Steve.
Just in the last segment, when I mentioned that the part of the market that's hurting is $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 prices.
Yeah.
That plays into that there's not financing for those homes unless the buyer happens to have 20, 30, 40% down.
And that's what they've got to do. So, and so Steve's right on that. When he's got high-end clients like that, they need to have a large amount of money down and don't expect a 30-year fixed on that. Once again, I said the gate is narrow. If you've got issues with credit, you need to talk to your broker or go in the bank, get a credit report done. There's ways that you can improve your credit scores with just a few little alterations with that. And credit scores are key. Also, as I mentioned, loan to value, it's not just loan to value, it's combined. If you're refinancing, you've got a first at 80%, but you got a second at 10, then you're going to have a problem because you're looking at combined loan to value these days. And then and be prepared to show your income. You need to show your W-2s, or if you're self-employed, you need to show your tax returns. So all those things come into place will determine if you can get through that gate in order to get a refinance. But if you can, now is a great time to do it. I'm positioning personally my clients to go ahead. We're getting their paperwork together. We're getting them approved. And basically, we're going to float until we see the rates go down into the 4s again. And once they do, we're going to jump on it. And I would recommend you do the same thing. Ultimately, why this is going to be important, why there's going to be a lot of pressure for the Fed to do this, is because without getting the rates down to loosen up people's, monthly obligation, their mortgage payment, they're banking on the idea with a lower mortgage payment, homeowners will have more money to spend, and that's going to stimulate the economy. That's going to create jobs and everything else. So there's going to be a lot of pressure to get that going. That's why I think now is the time to go ahead and put your paperwork together, get refinanced, because it's coming down the pike, and don't wait. Do you concur?
Absolutely. Even if you're just starting to think about refinancing or getting a loan, get in touch with your mortgage broker, because even if you're not ready, they can give you some guidelines of what you might need to do in the next 2 or 3 months to put yourself in a strong position.
And also, Steve, also to buy something, by the way, too. So we'll be right back with our final thoughts. First of all, I want to thank, in the final thoughts segment, I want to thank Madison Nguyen for coming on the program. She's been on a few times. We were on happier notes at that time because we were talking about her impending election or some of the things that she wanted to do as the first elected Vietnamese American woman in the state of California. But on the heels of that, because of a name of a section of a district of our city, it's been bogged down, and now she's in a recall situation. I'm hoping that you vote no on this recall of Madison Nguyen, and that you'll give her support for the remainder of her term, which is just another year away from us. And then I want to thank Steve Suchow for coming on the program. He talked about a little bit what's going on in the market. If you're interested in REOs or short sales or anything like that, you need to get a hold of your real estate professional to go ahead and see if you can do that. And Steve Suchow would be great for that. And finally, this is a great time to refinance. If you have any questions with that, you need to get prepared, by the way. Get a hold of your broker, get a hold of myself. I'll be glad to go ahead and work with you on that. But for tonight, we want to thank you. For Steve Suchow, Madison Nguyen, I'm Brian Stuckey. Good night. We'll see you next week on Get Real.